Hello and welcome to Dialogue. Chinese Premier Li Qiang joined other leaders of governments in attending the 22nd meeting of the Council of Heads of Governments of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization this week in Kyrgyzstan's capital of Bishkek. What topped the agenda of the SCO meeting? What new cross-border cooperation projects are evolving in Central Asia? And after 2 decades, what is the significance of the SCO in today's world of growing geopolitical uncertainties? To take a closer look at these questions, I'm glad to be joined by Juma Ordubayev, former Prime Minister of the Kyrgyz Republic, Viktor Gaozhikai, Chair Professor of Suzhou University, and Mark Sloboda, Moscow-based international affairs and security analyst. That's our topic. I'm Xu Qinduo. Welcome to Dialogue. Let's start with the meeting in Bishkek. Mr. Ordubayev, tell us what topped the agenda, as we said, of this year's meeting of heads of governments of SCO nations.
Actually, I wanted to start with Chinese premier. He came with official visit to Kyrgyzstan. At the same time, he participated in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit of heads of governments. So it was the first visit of Chinese premier to Kyrgyzstan in 7 years. A lot of potential issues were discussed, a lot of rich agenda of bilateral meetings. As far as concerned the Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit, then the heads of government take into account the main decisions which was taken in a summit of head of states of Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So it's up to the government to go into detail, to put realistic action plan and to deliver. So the political will is there. The government's now discussing who will do what and when, how to improve already good relationship between member countries, and what to look forward in terms of future of this institution.
Victor, what's your takeaway of the summit meeting?
Thank you very much for having me. I think this SCO's prime ministers or heads of governments meeting taking place right now is against a very interesting and deteriorating international background. We have the war in Europe, we have the war involving Israel and the Hamas in the Middle East, and there is the prospect of the wars getting further escalated or even out of control. That means for the SCO members to focus on stability and promoting cooperation and increase preparedness against any kinds of possibilities, including, for example, the rise of radicalization and extremism, is becoming more and more important. Further, I think SCO's mission is also try to deal with all these uncertainties. The best way is to promote cooperation, solidarity, and economic development. This remains a challenge for all the SCO members, and how they can really compare notes and come up with more effective ways to maintain stability on the one hand, but promoting cooperation and solidarity and economic development on the other hand is becoming more and more urgent. And I think we have great expectation for the SCO because it has played a stabilizing role in that part of the world for more than 2 decades. And there is a lot of expectation that it will continue to do so in greater efforts going forward.
Mark, I wonder if you agree with Victor, this is the larger background for, let's say, global uncertainty. But if you look at Eurasia here with SCO nations, mostly their priority basically is about connectivity and development, more trade, more investment. What do you make of that?
Yeah, so the prime minister level meeting of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization focuses on economics, finance, commercial issues. and the long, slow, tedious business of lowering trade barriers between different countries. And that continues. But I think it happens with the backdrop, as was previously mentioned, of much larger geopolitical events. The NATO proxy war against Russia in Ukraine, as well as the crisis in Palestine with Israeli forces bombing Gaza and bombing it, to dust, essentially, which many experts have already called as will almost certainly lead to ethnic cleansing and genocide of the Palestinian people in Gaza. And there is the specter, very real specter, that once Israel launches ground operations inside Gaza, that we could see a very rapid and multi-level escalation of the crisis. And right now, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization has two members that could potentially be drawn into this conflict. Iran, right now, is for the first time, the first prime minister level meeting, a full member of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and less likely, but still possible, is the potential that Russia, with military bases in Syria, which has also already been bombed by Israeli Air Force, could potentially be drawn into the conflict as well. And that specter is very real, with the threat of a U.S. aircraft carrier and Marine Expeditionary Group right a little bit south, off the Israeli coast. So I think that is a bit of geopolitical preoccupation to the normal order of business in Bishkek.
Well, against that global background, probably I guess people value more about the peaceful cooperation and the priorities of development. Mr. Odubayev, speak of that, as you said, the Chinese premier basically is both on the trip to, state visit of your nation and also join this summit meeting there. We do see, when it comes to bilateral cooperation, a number of deals were made during the trip, such as the construction of a new solar and wind power plants. So tell us more about these projects. Are we seeing, say, the transition of energy generation in the Kyrgyz Republic?
Yeah. You are right. Actually, the real kickoff of the strengthening of bilateral relationship has been done in a May summit of head of states in Qiang. It was first summit in the format one, which is China +5. And it was really, action was taken in terms of very comprehensive cooperation and development. Just if you take into account my country, that the core, as you also mentioned, attention will be given to cooperation in energy. The economy of my country, as well as the population, growing, so we need more energy. We committed to the green development. In that respect, really now big projects are starting to take place. In solar, there is a commitment to build big solar cells, let's say land factories. There is a commitment to build wind energy factory, as well as, which is even more important for us, to build few hydroelectrical stations. So my country is very rich in hydro resources because we have mountains and very strong rivers. So it looks like that few hydroelectric stations will be built in a river of Sarjaz, which is on the border between Kyrgyzstan and China. This will require a lot of investments, a lot of expertise will be required, but things are moving quite well. We have now 2 border crossings between China and Kyrgyzstan through the mountains, and now it will be the 3rd one which will open, which will be important. But the mega project among those which was discussed is the railroad between connecting China, Kyrgyzstan, and Uzbekistan with further down to Europe. This railroad trajectory will be about 900 kilometers shorter, and the most shortest one between China and Europe. And so far, things going on well. The bankable feasibility study is in place, and now countries are debating financial model, who will do what and how. So all this, if I list all this project, it is really ambitious ones, mainly concentrating on infrastructure, transport connectivity, and energy cooperation. This is absolutely important for the whole region, and the somewhat similar projects are developing between China and other Central Asian countries. So we have in horizon quite ambitious plans to go forward, and in that way, we will be making really building trust, building economic cooperation, which going deeper and deeper. We need it, and China need it as well. So Belt and Road Initiative was launched 10 years ago in Central Asia, not as accident. I think that Central Asia will be the testing ground for Belt and Road Initiative, and we really hoping that our excellent political relationships will be transforming into fruitful, very efficient economic cooperation.
Concrete connection or the benefits on the ground. Victor, this China, Kyrgyzstan, and Uzbekistan railway network, is that an addition, let's say, to the China-Europe or China-Eurasia, let's say, connectivity effort, and that, of course, in terms of efficiency and its potential contribution to regional connectivity, that's tremendous. So that's a critical infrastructure project for the three countries or for the region right now.
Absolutely. If you look at the membership of the SCO countries, many of which are actually landlocked countries. Now, by building connectivity, railway, highway, and otherwise, connecting them with, let's say, the vast networks in China and elsewhere, these landlocked countries can actually have greater, easier, and more effective access to the coastline. This will truly be a liberating force for many of these landlocked Central Asian countries. Now, this also typifies, very much exemplifies the role of the SCO, because it is really put a premium on peace, development, cooperation, connectivity of all kinds, and eventually tearing down barriers and facilitating exchanges of goods, services, and ideas across the national boundary. This eventually will generate a greater efficacy and efficiency for all the participating members, and this is in sharp contrast of the war and confrontation or rivalry or Cold War mentality as displayed by many other countries or blocs of countries. So I'm very much convinced that the SCO cooperation is the better way of doing things, not only for these membership countries, but also eventually, once you have these connectivity projects lined up, it stretches further deeper into Western Asia or into Europe. Now, this is the beauty of the SCO. And also, please keep in mind, the SCO is being promoted concurrently together with the BRI initiative, which involves more than 150 nations, and also the BRICS framework of countries, which now has 11 member states. And there is great expectation that the BRICS eventually will be further expanded from the current 11 members to about 50 member states. So you are talking about these different initiatives, sometimes involving same participating countries, sometimes different member states, but all focusing on peace, stability, development, improving living standards of the people, and connectivity of all kinds going forward. This is the better tomorrow that mankind will be happier about.
Mark, if you look at SCO, originally, I would say it is about the fighting against the, we call it the three ism, let's say, extremism, this separatism, and of course terrorism. This remains the priority, but also you see the involvement or evolution of SCO into other areas like, trade involvement, transportation, like transportation infrastructure, for example, connectivity, and trade. The Russian Prime Minister Mishustin made a point in saying that Russia's trade with other SCO nations has actually increased more than 30% in the year 2022. That means a lot, I would say, for Russia if you focus on the nation's development in the past year.
Yeah, I mean, I think the SCO has, first of all, an important role to play in its primary mission of regional peace, stability, and fighting terrorism, extremism, and even organized crime. I think the lack of serious development of terrorist or extremist activity, particularly in Central Asia, within the last 2 decades, I think the Shanghai Cooperation Organization played an important role in that. And sometimes that's unheralded because you're trying to disprove a negative, but its existence helped prevent it. I think also it helped encourage peace and stability between the countries of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, particularly in Central Asia. I think the mechanisms and structures of the SCO were preventing recent Kyrgyz, Tajik border demarcation issues and tensions from blowing up into something more unpleasant than it already was. And I think the SCO is developing further with a role overlapping with, the Eurasian Union, overlapping with BRICS, overlapping with the Belt and Road Initiative to, foster trade and development of infrastructure. Again, principally in Central Asia, help linking China with more inward parts of the continent, not only Russia, but further south as well. So there is a lot of room for the SCO to play multi-sphere activities, none of which may be, a showstopper, but slow, steady, incremental improvement of relations across all spheres.
We're slow but firm increase of relationship. Mr. Odubayev, if you take a look at Chinese Premier Li Qiang, he made a point in saying that it is important to join forces to create a safe and efficient transport system, continuously promote liberalization and simplification of trade and investment procedures, and ensure the stable and uninterrupted functioning of production and supply chain. China is ready to continue to expand import of high-quality goods from other member countries of the organization. We see that the Chinese side is making efforts to basically promote integration of all SCO member countries, through connectivity, more trade, or easier trade, I would say, and investment. And China is also, standing out probably to encourage more export of other countries to the China market. How do you characterize that kind of process, Mr. Odubayev?
It's a very important statement because transportation links are not only so-called hard infrastructure, physical railroad, for instance. It should be also be improvement in soft infrastructure and regulation of the transport links, for example, during the crossing the border. Now, for example, the train between Chongqing and Duisburg can reach in 11 days. Each day, even each hour, is important for the consumers, for businesses, because currently China is exporting high-quality goods. It's not anymore feasible to put it on a ship and wait for 3 months before it will arrive to the customers. In that respect, railroad is very important soft infrastructure, to get soft infrastructure. With that, we will be harmonizing legislation in transportation and custom and in border crossing problems, that it will be really a free economic zone or customs union of some sense. This is the right step to build customs union. And this is in terms of the task for heads of governments, prime ministers, very important. That indeed the supply chain will be moving ideally. So there is political will. So what will happen is that countries will move ahead with harmonizing its legislation in terms of soft infrastructure. The more quickly goods can be delivered from point A to point B without problems, the better for the businesses, the better for the quality of export and import. Another point which is important is that we are also targeting high quality development in our part of the world. We have highly educated population, and we wanted to attend Chinese-led initiative in driving priorities in high quality development. For example, in digital Silk Road. Yeah. So in that respect, also our heads of government debating this. It's a very hot topic in Central Asian countries, and I believe that it will be soon as one of the most important elements of our cooperation.
Mm-hmm. Victor, earlier this year, we have this 5+1 summit meeting in China. Central Asian nations and China, a couple of countries waived the visa process or this requirement for Chinese citizens, of course, for both sides. So that kind of measures obviously will facilitate people-to-people exchange and I guess goods and services too. So we seem like a accelerating a process of integration of the economies in the region.
Absolutely. I think one big positive role that SCO is playing is to promoting regional integration and cooperation. And this will generate huge amount of benefits for all the participating countries. And it is my personal hope that eventually Afghanistan will also become a full member, and the Mongolia will also become a full member. Right now, it is only an observer. So I hope when we talk about regional integration, we really need to make sure that all the countries in this part of the world will eventually become full members, playing important roles, generating huge benefits for their own people, but also adding and contributing to regional integration. And this is becoming increasingly important because, as one of the panelists just now mentioned, the world is fast entering into a digital age. And each of these Central Asian republics may be too small to really become a driving force in digital revolution. Therefore, how to make sure that SCO or the BRI or the BRICS framework, for example, can really becoming a major driving force for digital revolution, benefiting all the participating members so that no country, no nation, no ethnic group will be left behind. This will be the increasingly important challenge for all the participating countries of the SCO in the coming years and coming decade also.
Mm-hmm. Well, Mark, if you look at the external factor, let's say, the U.S. side has in one way or another expressed a concern about growing, let's say, influence of either Russia and China in the region because of SCO and other initiatives. And they had their own, 5+1. They have this Central Asian nations in Washington, some of the meeting there. Is there any concern about the U.S. involvement, engagement in this region?
Yeah, that's a little humorous comments from the U.S. about the malign influence of China and Russia in between them in their own backyard. That's humorous. It seems that the United States remembers that Central Asia exists on two occasions. One, when it's concerned about power projection into Afghanistan, which is no longer an issue now, the U.S. having been defeated and withdrawing in humiliation from the region. And two, whenever it wants to poke Russia, whenever it wants to annoy Russia. And of course, the U.S. is doing whatever it can on Russia's various peripheries to create problems for it right now, in the larger context of the proxy war against Russia in Ukraine. And that is the backdrop for bringing together the 5 Central Asian leaders in New York for a C5+ meeting on the sidelines of the annual UN General Assembly leaders meeting. And it was kept off the communique, but everyone understands that what the real purpose of that meeting was to lecture and threaten Central Asian nations to obey the U.S. Hegemonic sanctions, the existential economic war of sanctions against Russia, or else, right? Because the U.S. doesn't have a carrot to offer Central Asia. All they can do is offer a stick. And of course, the Central Asian nations all made the polite noises they're supposed to make when patronizing an octogenarian hegemon who is rambling on about things that they're not going to pay any attention to. And the large increase in trade with Russia, with the region, and Kyrgyzstan is one of those in the last year, is a lot due to private initiatives in these countries helping Russia evade sanctions through secondary trade. They would import critical components, semiconductors, other items needed, and then resell them on to Russia for a slight profit. And everyone was happy, of course, for the United States, whose war of sanctions has completely failed. And it does not appear that the lecturing that Biden gave the Central Asian states in this context has had any real effect on the ground economic activity continuing in that regard.
No real effects. So Victor, some say the overall priority for SCO is to increase their resistance to global challenges. Isn't it probably the means to that kind of increase in their capacity or ability? Is really about integration, as you said, about BRI, SCO, and BRICS by working more closely with each other?
Well, first of all, my deep conviction is that in dealing with Central Asian countries, especially those landlocked countries, the principle of equality is a must. You need to deal with each of these proud Central Asian countries as, for example, a brother or a sister. You cannot impose your will onto each and all of these Central Asian countries. Each has a very proud tradition of their own independence, of their own cultural heritage, for example. Therefore, for any country, especially the hegemon in the world, try to disregard the independence and the values and self-sovereignty, for example, of these Central Asian countries is a sure recipe of disaster. For China, I think the key is to deal with each of these Central Asian countries as a separate, independent, sovereign nation, as a brother and a sister. And sometimes you really need to see the world from their perspective, rather than trying to impose your will or your version of the truth on any of these Central Asian countries. This sets China apart from the other big country in the world. And I think the taste of the pudding is really in eating it. And I truly believe the participating nations of the SCO will appreciate that they are dealt with as brothers and sisters on equal terms.
Well, we have to stop there, Victor. With that, we come to the end of today's show. Many thanks to our guests. You can also find us on the CGTN app on YouTube. I'm Xu Qinzhuo. Thanks for being with us. See you next time.